Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of my wonderful and beautiful little subscribers out there. And how I love you all so, and I hope that you're all super duper well, super duper wonderful, and super duper delicious, and that life is treating you most deliciously. So what do you do? 3, 2, 1, my juicy little lads. Thank you, little lads. You're delicious and bright, yes. Okay, so the weather right now at, what's the time, Mr. Wolf, is nearly 1 p.m. In our old afternoon, in our old England marvelous little babies. It's a tiny bit windy. There is some blue sky, but there's also an awful lot of not so very nice fluffy white clouds. It's rather fresh and rather chilly today, my delicious little babies, and that's the weather forecast. But I hope that wherever you are in the world, that life is treating you most deliciously and that you've got better weather than what we have. Okay, at least it's daylight. You know, there's a place in the world, wasn't there? I looked at this years and years ago that I was watching about, and I should have wrote it down, and I never did. They only have about 4 hours of daylight, and then it goes completely black. My delicious little babies, anyway. So there's a video. First things first. There's a video that came up on my feed, and basically, I scrolled past it. This was a video that was from 8 years ago. Okay, so scroll past it. Anyway, then in the meantime, I was listening to and with anybody not in that way, okay? Our dear Mark Devlin, okay? Anyway, so I was scrolling down, and that doesn't mean I just got an itch. And then, so then I was coming across other videos, okay, Martin Little Babies. But then, you see, what's been happening all morning, Martin Little Babies, with YouTube, well, with my system anyway, it was happening on Mark Devlin's video. He was interviewing, anyway, I've wrote it all down, Martin Little Babies, it's over 2 hours long. There's a problem with his, and this was, when was that uploaded? Was it 2 weeks ago or something like that? Mark Devlin, bless him. Anyway, his system was all playing up, and that was then. What I've had all morning, again, that doesn't mean no, just my eyes itching. Mind you, it's been jumping the past couple of days, you know what I mean? So I'm either going to hear disappointment or bad news from somewhere. I usually do. My delicious little babies, okay? But what's been happening is, I could be in the middle of listening to a video, my delicious little babies, and what's happening is the screen goes black. So part of the screen goes black, and then it says sponsored, okay? And then it's continuously circling. Now, I've had this all morning, so then I have to come back out of the video and then go back in it again. Now, sometimes it repeats itself, then it will flip and go, or the screen will go flipping black again. Okay, my delicious babies, and it's been doing this. And I'll repeat it again, my delicious babies. It's been doing it all morning. Okay, my delicious babies. Anyway, now then, and this leads me to this video that I want to talk about to begin with, okay, because I want to remember everything that I'm saying. So then I was scrolling again, and then I came across this uploader, okay, because I never memorised the name of the video from 8 years ago, because I scrolled past it, it came up a couple of times. It's been on my feed since this morning. So this one here, Martin Little Babies, it's come up on his feed. Okay, Martin Little Babies, and this uploader here happens to have, with anybody, I repeat again, not in that way, happens to have 107,000 subscribers, Martin Little Babies, okay? And he's called, this is 200, so it's the numbers 200 space capital A acres, then space capital R reacts. Okay, my delicious little babies, I've never seen this uploader before, so I'll just repeat the uploader's name again. Sorry, my delicious little babies, and it's on YouTube. 200 space acres space reacts. Now, he's mentioned right at the beginning of his video, and he's shown the photograph of this uploader from 8 years ago, and he said this has come up on my feed. So it's not just me, my delicious little babies, okay? I was talking the other day about other videos that have been coming up on my feed, you know, just out of the blue. Do you know what I mean? Mad Lichtuk babies, okay? So it's not just myself, you know? Anyway, and as I pointed out the other day, you know, in the comments, ones were saying, you know, this has just popped up, you know, in my feed out of nowhere. Do you know what I mean? After all this time, do you see what I mean? Okay. So anyway, I would say that this is there we are, Spirit's way of saying, you know what I mean? Pay attention to this video, okay? So I should have clicked on it in the first place, my delicious little babies, but I've been listening to a lot of other, well, not a lot, but I've been listening to videos this morning, my delicious babies, so I can give out the information to you. So this video should read, with that uploader, 8 years later. This video is resurfacing for a terrifying reason. Okay, my delicious little babies, I'm just going to repeat it again. 8 years later, this video is resurfacing for a terrifying reason. Yes, my delicious little babies, and the videos are over 21 minutes long. Now, what the uploader, the one from 8 years ago, what he was talking about is that what he's saying is that none of us, I prefer the word mankind, that none of us are human. That's what he's saying. Okay, my delicious little babies, you really need to really properly take a listen to this, my delicious little babies. Now, when he said at one point, now it's important, I do agree with the uploader of this channel, it is important, there we are, to listen to every word that your man there, the one that I scrolled past when really I should have clicked on, okay? And of course that was doubly confirmation for myself, because then I come across this one's video where he said it come up on his feed as well, you know what I mean? So it's meant to be said. Although I haven't looked at any other videos, sorry, excuse me, of this uploader, I haven't. I was just focusing just on this video. Well, the fact of the matter is, my delicious little babies, is this. He's saying that we're not human. Anyway, so he talks about the Bible, and what he talks about is, my delicious little babies, is that what he said is, and this is towards the beginning, that that it's like the, I do not like this word, you know, we seem to hear a lot of it of late. It's the dead burying the dead. Now, we got to look at all different ways of how you would look at that. Straight away when I looked at it and I listened, okay, because I was looking and I was listening. Well, the first thing that straight away that came into my noddle was, well, that makes, there we are, perfect sense. Because none of us, there we are, ding, ding, dong, dong. So not being, you know, patronistic or anything, but none of us live forever. So if we have gone to services of our dear loved ones, family, friends, work colleagues, you know, our beautiful little sons and daughters, because some, bless the beautiful dear little souls, you know, with anybody not in that way, bury their little babies, okay? Well, there's going to come a time. So I'm not being morbid or depressing. I'm just what it is. I'm giving my take on this particular video. So there's going to come a time when somebody will be at our service. Do you know what I mean? Like in decades to come. There we are. Do you know what I mean, my delicious little babies? Okay, so for myself, that made perfect sense. Yeah, do you know what I'm saying? Okay, this is straight away what ding, ding, dong, dong came into my noddle. Because it is true. It is the dead burying the dead. Because sometime we will all, you know, there we are, one way or another, pass anyway. So, but this is more, I feel, there we are, a lot deeper than this, okay? What's also, he's saying, okay, what's also said here is not to trust in the word, you know, God. And of course, this can include pastors and things. Well, There we are. Well, we know this, don't we, marvellous little babies? You know what I mean? I believe that we have a creator. There we are. Yes, I do. Of course I do. You know what I mean? But I do not get sucked into not being nasty, but all of this religion side of it. So I've got no problem with what anybody else ever wants to do. You know, what they do in their lives is not my concern. Do you know what I mean? What I'm talking about is that I got, there we are, where your man there was coming from. There we are, totally I did. But, you know, I also believe, if I'm just going over dots, you know, here, there and everywhere on my pages, marvellous little babies. Well, we've all come from, there we are, somewhere, haven't we, marvellous? There we are, little babies. It's quite obvious, that is. So for myself, you know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realise this. I also believe that there is other life out there. So does my dear dad. There we are. There is other life out there. So I believed in this. There we are, ding, ding, dong, dong for decades. Do you know what I mean? So when others over the decades have dismissed it, whatever I've said, because I have come across, there we are, many marvellous little babies. Do you see what I mean? Okay. I totally disagree with that. And of course, I've had little encounters. There we are. Do you know what I mean? Marvellous little babies. So I fully, there we are, believe what I speak. There we are. Do you know what I mean? Marvellous little babies, okay? But it's very interesting. He also talks about a part to do with Archangel Michael. Now, what I want to say here, because I will always fully defend, which I will, marvellous babies, I will always fully defend my beautiful dear Archangel Michael and my beautiful dear Archangel Gabriel. And the reason why I do this, marvellous little babies, okay, is because I work with them, there we are, on a daily basis, okay? I've always been a healer. I'm going to repeat all this again in case anybody happens to see my videos, you know, for the first time. You know what I mean, marvellous babies. I've always been a healer, okay? That goes, there we are, that goes without saying, okay? But back in 2017, anyway, I was drawn towards doing this course, okay? There we are, by hook or by crook. That's the old-fashioned saying, marvellous little babies, figure of speech. And there were things that teacher, okay, she couldn't quite father out. Okay, marvellous little babies? No, she could not. And what am I talking about? Well, what I'm talking about is, marvellous little babies, okay? We were talking about dragons because it was a 2.5 day course, okay, which happened to cost me 300 ka-ching, 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 pound, shilling, pence, dollars and change. So this was, in my view, not a cheap course to do. Okay, marvellous little babies. So we were talking about the dragons, and she said, oh, you know, you can all have a break. There was only 5 of us there. But when I turned up marvellous little babies at the beginning, I said there should have been 8. And she said, well, yes, Carly, you are correct. She said there should have been 8, but 3 said that they couldn't make it. Okay, marvellous little babies. So anyway, there we are. It's just what my dear spirit gave me. So she said we can come out and have a break. I'm not going to, you know, ramble on, okay? I'm trying to just say it as quickly as possible and my reasons why I adore my beautiful dear Archangel Michael and my beautiful dear Archangel Gabriel, okay? So as we were talking about dragons, I said, well, I happen to really love dragons. You know, and I feel that what's happened is that, you know, they do, oh, Puff the Magic Dragon, do you know what I mean? And all this, okay. It's another way of scaring, okay. But I happen to be very interested in that sort of thing, okay. So we went outside, proper blue, clear sky, not one cloud in the sky. In fact, for the whole of that weekend, there wasn't one cloud in the sky. Look at that. So I said to the tutor, we had about 15 minutes. So I said to tutor, I says, you know, we've just been talking about dragons. She said, yes. I said, look up at the scar. She looked up at the scar and it looked like this like see-through dragon. It was like see-through. It's really hard for me to explain. It's see-through dragon. And a jaw dropped. The teacher, you know, the tutor. She said, I've never ever seen anything like that before in my life. You see what I mean? I said, so well, we've been talking about dragons, haven't we? Do you see what I mean? Okay. So went back in. Fast forward. When it come to the time to do the, you know, where we had to do our practice and everything in order for us to receive our certificates, one dear lady there, bless her, she said, I cannot continue with the course. I only spoke to her, this dear lady. My spirit never took to the other three who were there because I did not feel that they were there for the correct reasons. Okay, so my spirit never took to them. I'd rather sit on my own and eat or walk outside, you know, and go and stretch my legs, you know what I mean? Okay, rather than have to engage with those other women. Okay, my delicious babies. That's just how I felt. So I'm just done saying it the way it is. And I did say it, actually. I did say they could tell that I didn't particularly like them very much. And I never liked the spirit, not at all. And one of the women were crying. I said, so what are you crying for? You know what I mean? Like blarting like a titty la, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, I never said, you know, anything that was going to, you know, offend. I just didn't want to talk to them. Simple things. You know what I mean? My delicious little babies, okay? So, getting back to the matter in hand, so this dear woman, who I did speak to, like I said, I liked her energy, but not the others, okay? She said, I cannot continue to do this course. She said, I'm so nauseous. She was only little. She was just a bit smaller than myself with blonde hair. She said, I'm very nauseous. She said, I've got a terrible migraine. She said, I'm going to have to get my husband to come and collect me because I cannot even drive. I said, no. I said, please, you've got to stay. I said, because otherwise you're going to lose your 300 ching, you know, your change. Do you understand what I mean? Your money. I said, let me do. I said, because we've got to do this practice run. I said, in order for us to get our certificate. I said, and I want you to get your certificate too. Basically, that's what I said to her. Okay. So I said, let me do your healing. Okay. So what we had to do, I was stood next to the teacher. Well, not so far away anyway. Okay. And this dear lady, who was very poorly, was sat on a chair in front of myself. Now, a bit further away, there was another woman stood up and there was another woman sat down. Do you follow what I'm saying, my delicious little babies, please? And thank you. So we have to do a special thing. I personally do not work with music, okay? I just find it very irritating and very off-putting, okay? I was there to do my course, what my beautiful dear spirit guides had sent me to do. Do you understand? There we are. Do you see what I mean, my delicious little babies? That's why I was there, okay? So we did the healing. Now, the teacher, she leant forward like this. She looked at the other two with a woman stood up who was doing the practice run with the healing with the other one who was sat down. And the teacher leant forward and she said, I'm really sorry. She said, I could not see you at all. She said, right behind me, right behind Carla, she said, was larger than life. I'm pretty sure now, I'm going back all these years ago. Archangel Michael. There we are. Okay, my delicious little babies, okay? She said, I've never ever seen, she was like this. You know what I mean? She said, I've never ever seen anything like that before in my life. She was so large, she said it was just beautiful to see. Now, this dear woman who I was doing the healing for, I'd completed the healing. Absolutely nothing wrong with this woman at all. She was bing, 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 as bright as a button. I said, how are you feeling? I just leant, down. So, how are you feeling, my little lovely? She said, well, I tell you what, she said, I don't know what you do. She says, well, I do know what you've done. She says, she said, everything's gone. She said, I feel wonderful. I said, do you really? She said, yes. She said, I do not feel nauseous anymore. I do not have a migraine. She said, I just feel so wonderful. I said, that's wonderful. I said, my job is done. Do you see what I mean? Okay. But I felt the presence behind myself. There we are. I felt that presence, strong presence behind myself. And it's almost as if I felt like somebody, I get these feelings sometimes, my little babies, like when I'm doing the healing, put my hands on somebody's shoulders, yes? Or I could say to someone, put your hands out, okay? Sometimes I could feel hands on top of mine. And I've also had many other feedback over my years where ones have actually said to me, they said, when you leave the room, it feels as if somebody is still got their hands on their shoulders. So they could be sat there or lay down and I could leave the room and they still feel as if somebody's hands are on their shoulders. Okay, Mads, little babies, so I'm not going to say anything more about that. I'm not going to say I'm not here to bore you because that's not boring. The gift, there we are, that I have been given so very beautifully, okay, is something to treasure. So when it comes to like anyone who talks about my beautiful dear Archangel Michael or my beautiful dear Archangel Gabriel or any beautiful dear little angels for that matter, right, I will, there we are, be the first to stand in defence here, okay, because they helped me. They've helped me so many times. There we are. It's just unreal. Okay, I had somebody not long ago came for a healing. I had to go in and out 3 times. I thought, are they all right? Of course, I never had to worry about that. You know what I mean? I mean, for the fact that they did very sadly take something. But anyway, other than that, I never ever have any problem at all. My little babies, what's the point I'm making? When I went in the 3rd time, not so long back now, and turned around and said a couple of months ago, even less, and turned around and said, I never wanted to open my eyes. I never wanted to wake up. They felt, the exact words was, they said they felt that they were being lifted off the couch. Yeah. And they said they never felt such peace in the whole of their life. Okay, I have others where, they just feel perfectly fine. I have others where they just want to drift off to sleep. They're very, very, they're at peace. There we are. Do you know what I mean? Mad little babies, I can help with aches and pains and things. There we are, like this now. But for myself, I would be nothing without my beautiful dear Archangel Michael and my beautiful dear Archangel Gabriel. They use me as a vessel to help others. There we are. Do you see what I mean, mad little babies? That's the very best way that I can explain it. Okay? So dear Archangel Michael has been mentioned, okay? Which, of course, like I said, I mean, I'm the first one to defend. But not only that, I get a bit uppity. Do you understand what I mean? Because I see things differently because I know how they help me to help others. Do you see what I mean, mad little babies? Just like I do not believe this bullshit about fallen angels. I do not believe it. I've got nothing. Every time I ever say it, I've got nothing across my shoulders. That's telling me no. There is no such thing as fallen angels. Now, ones could come to my birth race and they could argue. I love my beautiful little cows. It's just figure of speech. They could argue until the cows come home. They believe what they believe. There we are. And I believe what I believe. And that is it. End of conversation. I do not wish to engage any further. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to stand there. I could argue the toss and I could say, well, this, that, the other. I don't want to know. There's too much of this, there we are, bullshit going around, in my view. Angels are the most, there we are, if anybody has experienced, there we are, the most beautiful thing, there we are, that anybody could ever possibly have or encounter. So how on earth, there we are, ding, ding, dong, dong, can anybody have a fallen angel? Do you see what I'm saying, okay? Again, we have been misled. We have been lied to. Forever, we've been lied to, whatever o'clock. And you have to put it all together. But it was a very, very interesting little video. There we are, Martylish Babies. So please and thank you, take a listen to. And I wish that I hadn't have scrolled past. I wish that I hadn't have done. I wish, because usually when it's like that, I will click on it. Do you see what I mean? Okay, I don't know why I never. I do not know why I never. But anyway, the point is, it made me, again, do you understand what I mean? Okay, so that I had to pay attention to this to tell you. Okay, I'm hard to look baby, so I've done my job there. Please take a listen. Very interesting, Martylish babies. I do agree that there are some who walk among us who are, shall we say, different to us. There we are. I do believe in that as well. One of the ways that you can, that I've usually been able to tell over the decades, Martylish babies, it's something I've never really talked about on my videos, but they have a certain look, the shape of their face, how tall they are, and with some they can look very vacant. Okay, they just look different. There we are, to any normal, just a figure of speech, Martylish babies, any other Joe blogs walking down the road. There we are, they just look different. Okay, there's also a bit of talk in there about the giants. Now, if we look at the Guinness Book of Records, Martylish babies, there's been a few, hasn't there, where, you've got the really tall, I used to be bought, when I was a little Martylish babies, I used to be bought, annuals and everything, okay, every fake Crimbo. And I used to have like the Guinness Book of Records or whatever the annual was out that year. Do you know what I mean? Martylish babies. And so, yeah, very fascinating, the Guinness Book of Records. It's got licorice, all sorts, hasn't it, in there, Martylish babies. Anyway, fast forward. Well, there are giants, aren't they? Ones who are exceptionally tall. Do you know what I mean? So it's very interesting in this short, well, it is, it's just over 20 minutes. It's not long, Martylish babies, but please do not get, and the uploader's basically saying the same, just wording it differently to myself, okay, Martylish babies. What he's saying is, it starts out slow. Do you understand what I mean? But sometimes when it starts out slow, there we are, if you scroll past, if you fast forward, do forgive me, if you fast forward, then you're missing other parts. Do you understand what I mean, Martylish babies? Okay, it's the best way that your man there from 8 years ago, there we are, is explaining it. Okay, very interesting little video. Anyway, next one, Martylish babies. This one here, this uploader happens to have 267 subscribers, Martylish babies, again on YouTube. They're all on YouTube. The uploader is called, and by the way, bless that uploader from 8 years ago, bless him, because the uploader who I've just told you about on another channel, he, bless him for putting him on his channel, but he pointed out, this uploader here, that the one from 8 years ago didn't get a lot of views, for his videos. It's sad, really. Do you understand what I mean? But this is how it happens, you know what I mean? It's like some videos just blow up. You know what I mean, Martylish babies, if ones need, let's just say, a distraction, from something else. You know what I mean, Martylish babies, and others, because I've said before, you can find some beautiful, not in that way, some beautiful little golden nuggets in these little, tinier, there we are, tinier channels. Do you understand what I mean, okay? That many wouldn't even see. Do you see what I'm saying, Martylish babies? Anyway, so this one here, my delicious little babies, capital B in the old space bar in YouTube, should anybody happen to have any form of an interest. Biotech, okay, altogether, biotech space, capital S science. That's the uploader, Martylish babies. So it's biotech space science. Now, this video here is just over 7 minutes long. So I'm scrolling down. There we are, aren't I, Martylish babies? I forgot where it was now. And this has come up twice. And I thought, you know what, I must, there we are, I must tell you about this one. Now, for some of you Marvelous babies, you will know about this, but for others of you, you will not. This is what it reads. TGN 1412, the deadly drug trial that turned into horror. So I'm just going to repeat that again for you, shall I? TGN 1412, the deadly drug trial that turned into horror. Okay, my delicious little babies, now then, what's this about? I personally, because I think it had even been on the old, bullshit news, BBC News. Anyway, my delicious little babies, what's the point I'm making here? This is basically a drug trial that went wrong. The company that it was concerning, I think they went bust. Okay, my delicious little babies. Anyway, lots of problems surrounding it. And let me tell you, it wasn't a very good ending. There was one in particular, what was his name? Ryan. Oh dear, he lost part of his fingers and everything. My delicious little babies, okay? That's what trials do. That's why when they offer, and I knew somebody, at least how long am I going back now? About 18 years ago now, with somebody's daughter, and she was going to do, she was at university at the time, university, and she'd, come back and told a mammy bear that, she could do this trial, she's going to get 1,800, ka-ching, ching, ching, to do this trial. I said, no, please tell her not to. So she said, I'm going to find out more about it. So, so she did, and she, well, thankfully, she did listen to her dear mum. She did. And I remember it. And she even mentioned my name. She says, well, Carla said the same. Do not do it. Do you know what I mean, my delicious babies? And thankfully, she never. But very sadly, not everybody follows good advice from others, do they? My delicious little babies, and it appears in this particular case that seemed to be the case. Now, if you looked at some of the comments, my delicious little babies, sorry, yeah, slightly stumbled here, rightfully so. Shouldn't even be doing these trials anyway, and not on little animals either. Little beautiful things. Anyway, the point is, these are suffering now for the rest of their lives. Some of them would not know until years ahead. Does that remind you of something, my delicious little babies? Does it remind you of something? Okay. And some suffered, there we are, more than others, very sadly. Was it back in 2006? Okay, my delicious little babies. Okay. That's that. But bless the dear little souls. But let's hope that nothing like that happens again with them. Anybody who they know or anybody in their family, nothing is worth the ka-ching, ching, ching. Now I'm not sure about if they did accept any ka-ching. I'm not sure. But I'm pretty sure if somebody said, oh, just come and do it for nothing, I'm pretty sure that in the world we live in, my delicious little babies, there are not many who would say, well, I'm not doing any trial unless I'm going to see what's the colour of money? You know what I mean? My delicious little babies, okay? So I'm not sure about that, in all fairness, okay? I just thought I'd mention it. Now then, my delicious little babies, this one here, this is Serpentes, okay, my delicious little babies, okay? Serpentes on YouTube, my delicious little babies, okay? Capital S. He happens, this Winston, he happens to have 1.58 million subscribers, my delicious little babies, on YouTube. Like I said, the video should read, it's not long, I think it's about 16 minutes long, just over. The Chinese e-bike fire epidemic they don't want you to know about. Okay, my delicious babies, so I'm just going to repeat this again for you. The Chinese e-bike fire epidemic, they don't want you to know about. Yeah, stumbled there. Yeah, you should see this blowing up all over the place. Well, when I was watching BitChute for those years, my delicious little babies, okay, this is nothing new to myself to see this, but it was mainly cars. Okay, my delicious little babies, but of course, this is all to do with, to keep the planet all happy and running well and everything. My delicious little babies, okay, we'll try saying that to, families and friends and anybody else who has very sadly gone through this. My delicious little babies, okay, it really just does not end up very nice at all. My delicious little babies. Now, there's a lot that Winston could not show, okay, because of YouTube rules. You know, it's all YouTube rules. Do you know what I mean? Mad Delicious Babies. But they also have China fact chasers. China, I'll repeat again, fact chasers on old YouTube. Mad Delicious Babies. They also have the China show. The China show on YouTube as well, Mad Delicious Babies. So, and they also have, so that's this, you know, then there's a Lamo, Leo. Anyway, they both have their own separate, and Serpentez, you know, they have the separate channels, Mad Delicious Babes, okay? But please take a listen to this and a watch, please. Please and thank you, Mad Delicious Babies. And if you do happen to know anybody who, you know, who wishes to purchase any of these, especially ones with no name, is what Winston's talking about, Mad Delicious Babies. Now, so all these getting ticked off, yes? Now, the final one, Mad Delicious Babies. So this is on YouTube, Mad Delicious Babies. Mark, capital M. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Mark space D Devlin. Okay, Mad Delicious Babies. Devlin. Mark space Devlin. Okay, Mad Delicious Babies is now up to 21.9 thousand subscribers, Mad Delicious Babies, okay? So he's an ex-DJ. See, I mentioned some of these, you know, at different times, okay, Mad Delicious Babies. He's an ex-DJ, okay, because he's played in, he's worked in, 48 countries in his time. He's wrote books, you know, and everything like this now then. This video is just over, I think it's about 2 hours, 16 minutes and something. Okay, Mad Delicious Babies. So it is a rather long video. And the part of it, sorry, I never needed to stumble there. Part of it, he went off, and he was they were struggling to get him back on, you know, to do the talk. Mad Delicious Babies. Okay, now apparently there's been a couple of issues a couple of times because he was meant to go on this other channel a while before. Sorry, I was just wondering what noise was. I thought it was rain, but I thought it doesn't look like it's raining. Although there's a lot of dark clouds now, soon covering the blue sky, Mad Delicious Babies. Anyway, sorry about that. I do get distracted sometimes. Well, there was a bit of a problem. Anyway, it got sorted out in the end. But this is where it all started, when the screen was going black. I had the same one with the first video that I told you about. Part of it, I think, from about 18 minutes on, the screen just went completely black. It's been playing up terrible this morning, Mad Delicious Babies, my YouTube has. So, yeah, certainly see, there we are, what's going on there, can't we, Mad Delicious Babies? But bless all the uploaders, and bless that dear young man, not in that way with anybody, from 8 years ago. Bless him as well. Do you know what I mean? Okay, it's all to alert others to things, you know what I mean, Mad Delicious Babies. But like I said, everybody can interpret out that first video what they will. Everybody gives a different take on it. Okay, Mad Delicious Babies. Anyway, but you know, it's really important to really listen very carefully to what he's saying. There we are. That's the point to that video, Mad Delicious Babies. Now, getting back to Mark's now. So the video should read, Archaix. I'm going to spell it for you, Mad Delicious Babies. Archaix. Okay. Welcomes Mark Devlin. Okay, Mad Delicious Babies. So I'm just going to repeat that again. Sorry, I never needed to stumble there. Archaix. I don't know how to say it, Mad Delicious Babies. I do not know how to pronounce it. Archaix. So I'm sorry to the uploader. I just do not know how to pronounce it, Mad Delicious Babies. Okay, so I'm not even going to go there. Welcomes Mark Devlin. Okay, Mad Delicious Babies. Like I said, now we're going to close our book, and now we've got to go back to where we need to go back to. Now then, so what's this video about? I mean, I did laugh in parts. With any videos, I do laugh in parts, Mad Delicious Babies. There's more room there, isn't there? Okay, Mad Delicious Babies. Anyway, and so what this is about, where Mark said, bless him, because you see what it is. Okay, let me just cut to the chase, get to the point without going around the houses. And this is where I'm going to end my video. The point is, I've so very enjoyed the videos, okay? The first one will more than likely be a one-off, okay? It's only to do with that video from 8 years ago, but like I said, I should have clicked on it and not just scrolled past it. So that was my mistake there, okay? I'm Ardlish babies, so I own up to that, okay? So they just put it in my boat race again so that I would, give it out, like I just said. Getting back to Mark Devlin's video now, yeah, they had a marvellous conversation. And what Mark was talking about, he said he's never really felt like, where we are on Earth, like it's home, because he goes deeply into conversations. Now, for myself, there we are, I appreciate these type of subjects, topics, conversations, care, martyrs, babies, because I'm the same. You see, at the end of the day, this is why many do not... let's just say I'm too... ones have actually said it to me over many years, Martish babies. Some have said, oh, this is just too much of a deep conversation for me, Carly, you know what I mean? Okay, they're just not ready, very sadly, bless them, to hear, you know what I mean? So for dear Mark, bless him, he's a very deep, not in that way, he's a very deep... gentleman with how he talks, okay, Mardlish babies, okay? But what he says, so we are very important things, okay, Mardlish babies. And I thought his video today was marvellous. I do it anytime. I think it was a couple of weeks ago when that was uploaded, Mardlish babies. I just thought the conversation, between his dear Mark and his guest was, there we are, a really good conversation, Mardlish babies. Anyway, and I totally got where Mark was coming from, because I've said for decades, I may not have ever said it on my videos, but it's like things, there we are, before I even say it, jogged my memory but from when I was little, I've never ever felt at home. I mean, like I said, I've moved 35 times in my lifetime. I've mentioned that, of course, but I never ever felt quite at home. Living here nearly 10 years, the longest I've ever lived anywhere, Martinish babies. I'm usually over and out. I'm usually gone way flipping sooner than this, you know what I mean, okay? So I've never really felt at home. So I totally get where Mark, there we are, was coming from, Martinish babies. Just something inside of myself, just nowhere feels like home. Do you know what I mean? Martinish babies. So there's that, okay? Sorry, excuse me. Plus, Mark said, bless him, he said he doesn't particularly... No, he's fine, Martinish babies, okay? But he just said he doesn't particularly like living here on this... I really get him, I really, really do. Martinish babies, it did make me laugh, because in a pleasant way, in the correct way I'm talking about, Martinish babies, because if you look at it, we have so much flipping shat thrown at us, okay? Like, you can have a moment of flipping happiness, do you know what I mean? And then the rest of it's flipping shite, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? So you get like tiny little nuggets of flipping happiness, and then it's flipping back to the grandstand. I was looking at it from a different way, do you know what I mean? Because at the same time, I get where he's coming from, because that is pretty deep. Because on an honest note, it's very difficult to live on this planet, man. Sorry. Mark Devlin, bless you, half, okay, because it is difficult, man, babies, to live on this planet sometimes, okay, even for the best of us. Do you know what I mean? With the best will in the world, it can be very trying. Do you see what I mean, Martinish? Well, I can be very flipping trying at times, Martinish babies, but what's the point I'm making? It was a banging video. I love not in that way. I love Mark Devlin's videos. Do you know what I mean? Because he talks about so many different things. Okay, there we are, and it's ding ding dong dong common sense. Okay, but there are times in it did make me laugh. Do you understand? But I always laugh. Anybody where I live, you used to ask them, they would all say, we can hear me flipping cussing and cursing. You know what I mean? Because when I cuss and curse, I cuss and curse. Do you know what I mean, Martin? Babies, okay, but when you hear me laugh, you know what I mean? And my old neighbours, oh, bless them, before my beautiful, dear little neighbours moved in upstairs, my other beautiful, dear little neighbours, when they were moving out, because they're a beautiful, dear little family, you know. They're all so beautiful, beautiful little families. I've been truly blessed and let it continue anyway. Well, she said, the dear husband's dear wife, like, you know, my old neighbours, said, you know what we're going to miss? Your singing, Carla. Because I was always singing, Martha Little Babies in the kitchen, cooking and everything, and, you know, walking around the house or vacuuming, whatever I'm doing. Always hear me sing. He said, I'm really going to miss you singing. Do you know what I mean, Martha Little Babies, okay? But let me get back to the matter in hand, because I'm flipping, you know, my wheels have gone flipping one way, and I should, you know, my other wheel should be going the other way anyway, Martha Little Babies. So anyway, so yeah, so there was parts of it, yeah. I mean, it's very serious. But the way I see it is, Martha Little Babies, and it is very serious to pay attention to it, you know, but at the same time, bless, we have to see the funny side of things, okay? Because if we do not, it can be what I call a very, there we are, miserable existence. Do you know what I mean, Martha Little Babies? I mean, we see it in everyday life, don't we? You know, everybody has what they do. You have some, you know, how can I explain? Bless the beautiful, dear little souls, not in that way, not in that way. They never look happy, always the head to the ground, always very down, always very, even if you say hello, they do not smile. You know, bless them, they do not crack the birth race, you know what I mean, okay? And my heart has gone out many times to anybody like that, because they're clearly existing, aren't they? But they're not wanting to engage with the rest of the world, so they just stay in their little bubble, and they'd rather just have their head down and just carry on walking. It's really sad to see, Martha Little Babies, but if we do not have a laugh about things, Martha Little Babies, can I think for many, we just say, well, you know what, just quit flipping living here. Do you know what I mean? I do not mean that, by the way, against anybody who very sadly has chosen to take another route. Okay, Marta, so I did not mean it that way, ever. I never, ever would. My heart goes out to them. Anybody who's taking their own life, Marta Little Babies, it really, really, really does. And what's I find so sad in all of that, you know, I wish I could help them myself. Do you understand what I mean? Because there's always somebody to talk to. But when you're lost, and that's what I'm talking about. So I'm not going to go any further with this, but what I am going to say is Mark Devlin is a very serious, dear gentleman, bless the way he comes across and what he talks about. And I fully respect that. Just like our lovely dear David Icke, just like our lovely dear Bill Cooper, our lovely dear Jordan Maxwell, you know, dear Bill and dear Jordan are very sadly no longer here, but I've listened to their videos, they are on and off for years. But the point is, we have to have that element of seriousness, especially when they're giving talks, okay? Because this is very serious, okay? But at the same time, we have to have a bit of light-heartedness, because if we do not, we just get sent stir crazy, man. Do you know what I mean, Martha Little Baby? So we have to have an outlet. I have to do it myself sometimes. You know, I could have why do I say that? You know, 101 things to do in the home. You know, the fact of the matter is, no, I do not have 101 things to do in the home. I'm just flipping full of shit. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, I'm just sort of using an example, right? But if I feel that my spirit needs to go out and get fresh air, or my spirit needs to just go for a walk, you know what I mean? Then I go for a walk. You know what I mean? Martha Little Babies, and well, we call it fresh air. I'm not so sure about that, Martha Little Babies, but we try and get what we can. You know what I mean? Martha Little Babies, okay? With a flipping firing boom, 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 and just flipping every 5 seconds, okay? But you have to sort of do something like that, you know what I mean, to clear your noddle. Otherwise, there we are, you will get driven insane, Martha Little Babies. So I do get where Mark's coming from. So there's that element of living on this earth. You know, it's like they put you here just not to be happy, Martha Little Babies. Do you understand what I mean? So you do have to laugh sometimes, okay? But I totally get where he's coming from on a serious note, you know what I mean? Especially when you don't know where he said about the reincarnation, Mark, you are banging, you know, where he turned around and said, he said, if this is a trick, he said, I'm not falling for it. or slap my, because it is true, Martinish babies, because you cannot believe any of this bullshit, can you? You know what I mean? So it's just got, I don't know. I think I'm just being tickled pink at the moment, Martinish babies. Anyway, so that's the end of our video. So wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, please have a super duper delicious time. You only get one life, my little honey bunnies. Sending peace, love, harmony, and bright blessings to each and every one of you. May your beautiful little selves and your beautiful little families, may you all be fully protected. And how I love you so. Remember the eagle. Okay, so until my next video, thank you so very much for any views, for any likes, and for the most occasional comments. My delicious little babies. Oh, I just don't let things bother me. There's just no point at the end. I do get peed off about other things, and just before I go, right, yesterday evening I was really on one. I was listening to videos, my delicious babies. Let me tell you, I even slammed my doors, because I said, so what we need to do is F these little effers out, dirty paedophiles, all of this thing now, just get rid of them. That is the way I look at it. Okay? I just do not feel no way. Okay, but get rid of it. Scum. Scutters. Do you know what I mean? You just get rid. Okay? No point keep talking about it. Just up and get rid of them. Job done. Do you know what I mean? But of course, the world that we're in, it doesn't work that way for some strange reason, my delicious little babies. I wonder why. I'm not inciting anything. I'm just saying. Anyway, my delicious little babies, so until my next video, you just look after now, okay? My delicious little babies, it looks nice today. It's like a nice little circle, isn't it? My delicious babies, not their circle, our circle. Okay, my delicious babies, love you. Take care. Thank you for listening. Blessings. Goodbye.